everyone,
Hello.
welcome back to Elephant Den.
It's Ashley.
And Alex.
And on this episode, we'll be discussing the film
Jurassic Park, Steven Spielberg's 1993 Jurassic Park. The one that everyone knows.
Everybody knows this film.
Yeah.
It's classic.
Classic, and we're going to tell you why it's the only film that's relevant in the franchise. The only film
You need to really watch. You don't really need to watch the other ones. We're just going to give you a brief recap of the film in case you haven't seen this film in a while.
So it stars Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, Richard Attenborough, brother of David Attenborough, who we've known from all the nature documentaries.
Okay, I wanted to look that up actually. I'm like, is he the documentary voice?
His brother. He came out of retirement to be in this film.
Okay.
And his character is what we could only assume a millionaire, billionaire. He has the means and resources to create a theme park which showcases dinosaurs. But before he could open the theme park, he has to get the endorsement and approval of a few professionals, those of whom which include Sam Neill as a archaeologist, Laura Dern. You have Jeff Goldblum as a mathematician. He also specializes in chaos theory.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a lawyer. And so this film, the story takes place over the course of a day or two, a weekend getaway on this island off of Costa Rica before he could ever open this theme park for dinosaurs.
Also, don't forget to include the kids.
And the kids as well. His grandkids.
Which are John Hammond's grandkids.
Yeah, which makes it very Steven Spielberg.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Just added a couple of kids there.
Yeah. Just like us, Steven Spielberg wasted no time into getting the rights to make this film, just as we wasted no time in making this review.
Yeah. How many years later? Almost 30 years later?
Yeah. We wasted no
To
time.
be fair, we were
older
born
than
yet.
us. But okay, it was based off a novel from 1990 by Michael Christian. So a mere 3 years later, Steven Spielberg made this film. At the time, in post-production, when they were working on the special effects, something that the film relied very heavily on, and it obviously was a huge pioneer in groundbreaking special effects.
Mm-hmm.
In that time, he was already making Schindler's List, which we recently talked about briefly, and we know that became a huge, critically acclaimed film. Very serious subject matter, whereas this is the kind of polar opposite. This is a very family-friendly film. It's a
science fiction world.
I also like to say it's what films are really made for, to attract all audiences, kids and adults alike. It has that fantasy element, that adventure, the action, the comedy. It's the Steven Spielberg cinema language, which kind of makes a perfect film, and he has a few of those under his belt.
He does.
Like Jaws, like Indiana Jones, and Jurassic Park I'd put there as well.
Yeah. Which is a perfect leadway to our very first point of why you only need to watch Jurassic Park 1993.
It's directed by Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, exactly. It's directed by Steven Spielberg. But also it's because it's the very first movie, right? It introduces you to this whole new world. It's like a lot of other first films that you watch in a franchise, like for example, John Wick, which we actually just did a review on, chapter 4. Check it out, link is above. All the other films that like introduce you to this world, the first one's always the best, the second, okay, third, and then it kind of just almost waters down to the point where it's not really necessary. So obviously the first movie is going to be the best because it's just a whole unexpected experience.
It's that initial shock value that a film gets an advantage over you, is your first immersion into this world. We were so surprised within the first half an hour how much this film does in like engrossing you in the plot, the world. And the premise is so intriguing, and it builds until it becomes, it gets turned around and things go wrong, and then it becomes almost like a thriller. But the whole time it maintains that Steven Spielberg,
Suspense.
I was gonna say the escapism of Steven Spielberg cinema. Steven Spielberg is an expert on creating characters which are very relatable and believable. And I could say, besides maybe the second film, which he also directed, the characters in this film are very believable to real life. Where the later films, and we're at 6 now in the present day, don't have that. They lose the shock value and they don't have the realistic characters.
I just want to go more into depth with what you're saying about the characters. I love that Steven Spielberg does a really good job in creating those character developments by inserting them in those in-between moments. And what I mean with in-between moments is, for example, there's a scene in the beginning where they're in a helicopter. John Hammond, you have Dr. Grant, Ellie, and Jeff Goldblum's character.
Ian Malcolm?
Dr. Malcolm, I think you're right. There's a conversation within that helicopter ride, which you didn't really need to put in there because it doesn't really carry the story forward. You can kind of skip that moment. You can go from them being in...
It's not exposition.
Exactly. But I love that Steven Spielberg does a good job in inserting that with putting the dialogue that develops these characters for you.
Good point, because in that moment, you see the group together for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
You understand Jeff Goldblum's like eccentric, he's very charismatic, but that personality, and it almost steals the whole movie. And then you have kind of Sam Neill, who's kind of more, he's not really concerned about whether Jeff Goldblum's character is hitting on Laura Dern, whom obviously Sam Neill and Laura Dern have like a realistic, there's a relationship there. It's also professional, but they're obviously together. But it's not so in your face, right? Their romance, it's not really shown at all. You're right, with Steven Spielberg, he does such a magnificent job in the in-between moments. For example, they're landing the helicopter and people are buckling up, and Sam Neill has two positives, right? Of the seatbelt, and they don't fit. And what does he do? He just ties it together, and it shows. It's a small moment, no dialogue, but it shows his adaptability and his problem solving, which will, it's a little foreshadowing into how he's going to be capable of overcoming what's to come.
Yeah, exactly.
I love those moments.
And that's, I think, what makes a perfect film, is inserting those.
Even those small moments create the pace which this film has. It's a 2-hour film, which, okay, that's a full-length film, but it's relatively short for what this film has to take on.
Going off of that, I think it's also the art of suspense. Steven Spielberg does carry the movie forward with that suspense. You're constantly on the edge of your couch watching this. Right off the bat, the film starts with
the first scene.
Yeah, the first scene of something coming out of the bush, right? I love all those moments that Steven Spielberg works with the shots and the close-up shots, and it doesn't need to show everything, Right, because it could be essentially like either a 5-second scene, or it could be a 10-minute scene, which a lot of modern films, I think, are a little guilty on. For this example, this introductory scene which Ashley's talking about, they're bringing the velociraptor into its enclosure. The film opens with the bushes and the haunting kind of score by John Williams, and it creates the tension with the instructor giving instructions, and you could tell everyone's this is a serious, on edge. There's
on
tension.
edge. There's everyone with tasers and guns on the standby, and this one guy in charge giving instructions, and then things go wrong, and those close-ups of his mouth, the arm slipping away, but without seeing the actual monster. Obviously it's reminiscent of Jaws.
Yeah.
And he does it in a few minutes, and the whole film does that, where it's like a couple minute long scenes, and they never feel too short or too long. They're just right. It's
his ability of storytelling that through these cinematography shots and the score and all of those creative ways of doing it, that's what makes a Steven Spielberg film. So it's not only that you're first experiencing this world, you're also really moment after moment you're feeling that suspense, you're feeling that all of those emotions of what's happening next and the adventure, you're there with these characters.
Right.
So that's our first point. Point number 2, the solution to the problem is already discussed in that famous lunch scene.
It is a very talked about scene, the lunch scene, right? It's like not even midway through the film.
Just to recap what's going on in this lunch scene, you have Dr. Grant, you have Ellie, you also have Jeff Goldblum's character, Malcolm, and then you have John Hammond, and you have the lawyer. They all sit on the table and they're having a conversation.
This is after when they're first introduced to the park and they realize, wow, there's real life dinosaurs here. And what does this mean? History has changed in this moment. This is groundbreaking.
Exactly.
And what are their initial thoughts? Everyone more or less has doubt besides the lawyer who sees dollar bills in front of his eyes. And obviously John Hammond himself is a very likable person because he wants to carry out this discovery and showcase it to everyone of the world, not just rich people. But he does have this God complex and he's kind of blind himself. And everyone else, including Grant and Malcolm and Laura, Dern's character Ellie, they raise the question of, is this right?
Ethically right,
Ethically, nature has selected dinosaurs to be extinct. There's 65 million years separating between the two species, humans and dinosaurs. Jeff Goldblum has a great monologue where he describes discovery as the rape of the natural world, and people like John Hammond are riding on the shoulders of giants who have made discoveries beforehand. He hasn't earned it. He's just merely taken those discoveries and now he wants people to consume it. He's patented it, put it on lunch boxes, and now he's selling it. And again,
which
it's
is
like it's delivered so well by Jeff Goldblum, who's so like eccentric and charismatic the way his script is written. But point there is that's the solution is we know it's not right and it's wrong.
Dinosaurs had their shot and nature selected them for extinction.
From that point on, the second half of the film is really just the chaos ensuing where the dinosaurs get unleashed and people die and the rest escaping. But very early on, the problem is addressed and answered.
And you clearly see who the villains are. It's not the dinosaurs. It's those two people, John Hammond and the lawyer, who all they see are money signs.
Similar to Jaws, where you think, okay, this is a shark movie, the monster is the shark. Here the dinosaurs are the monsters, but really it's the humans, these corporate men who want to just make money. Their ego is driving them.
Yeah.
Whether it's John Hammond or the lawyer or even the operations guy, Dennis Neardry, who has his own little side plot of how to sabotage in the park and make money. Those are the true villains, and they get dealt with fast. The book, from what I understand, I haven't read the book, but one of the big differences from the novel to the film is John Hammond in the novel is played more of the villain type, or at least he sees his demise. He gets eaten, kind of like I guess Frankenstein's monster, destroying the creator kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that leads to our other major dilemma with the later films is they somehow force a reason to keep the franchise going, where this film really dealt with it already.
Point number 3. So we like to say that this film, Jurassic Park, is not a film about dinosaurs. It's a film about a man who doesn't like kids. And he goes on this journey with 2 kids. He's pretty much trapped with them.
Yeah.
And he learns to love them and overcome his, I don't want to say hatred, but his dislike towards kids. And that's the main story. The dinosaurs just kind of make it exciting and more of an adventure story. The films following Jurassic Park 1993 are just films about dinosaurs. They don't really have that true heart that Jurassic Park 1993 has.
It's so true. And again, you could only thank this to Steven Spielberg, because what does he do time after time with all his films is he somehow brings it back to being about kids. Or like, no matter how old you are, you see a Steven Spielberg film through the perspective of a child.
Which makes it relatable.
And I feel the same way as I did when I was young watching this film, and now it's just slightly different because you see it from Alan Grant's perspective of like his fear. I describe it as a fear of children, and it's not really totally irrational. He describes them as smelly, and
Yeah.
but he's forced to survive along with these kids, and obviously being a good person, his priority is to keep the kids alive,
Yeah.
even over himself. That's completely void in all the other films. Like Ashley's saying, the later films are just about bigger, badder, genetically modified dinosaurs, and then them escaping into the real world and then coexisting with people, and them running through Italy and
It just doesn't have
whatever
enough,
places.
it just doesn't have enough depth, like
It's so shallow.
lacking the heart.
We'll briefly talk about some of the sequels because, okay, there's the second one, which again is directed by Steven Spielberg. He found an okay way into continuing the story, even though it's kind of like a MacGuffin of like having the second island, and then they were obviously riding on Jeff Goldblum because he was so liked in the first movie, so they made him the main character and gave him enough motivation to go to this island. That's fine. It's kind of a guilty pleasure of mine.
Also, it's kind of like, I understand if you really enjoyed the first film, you want to continue living that world.
In hindsight, it wasn't necessary, but okay, they did it. But we're talking about 6 films now. Let's go into Jurassic World, which was, the one which had the biggest gap between the last movie.
Because it came out in 2015.
15, and I think the third one was 2001. Jurassic World was just basically riding on the nostalgia. Obviously, it's like modern day special effects. What could that mean? Jurassic Park, the original, was a huge pioneer in special effects. To this day, it stands up. The later films, 2015's Jurassic World, had nothing new or anything to like surpass that, achievement. And then the shallow characters and the fact that they're just riding on nostalgia, it just gets ridiculous to the point where I didn't even watch the last one, and I don't think I will because I know what it is. And they were still big successes in the box office, which is really disappointing that they took people's money, but it is what it is.
If you had a great experience, a great theater experience, then maybe that's something.
Yeah, well, look at this face. I don't approve that at all. But anyways, to each their own. It's out there.
That's to the point though, because you're right. These days, films I feel like a lot of films these days are lacking that quality, or the relatableness.
You look at like the Disney remakes, for example. They're riding on the coattails of what's existed before, and they're losing all their magic. And okay, Jurassic, I know it's different where Disney is like going for the live action, but some of those are shot for shot remakes, and they're colorless, and the life is lost. I could say the same for this, where I know it's still live action and everything, but they're just trying to recreate what's been done before in one film. And as you said, it's not about the characters anymore. It's just about bigger, badder dinosaurs.
Yeah, exactly. That's why Alex and I are going back with older films and classic films and talking about them, because we just love to live these moments. Before we end off this video, we just wanted to give a few details and a few points that we liked about this film.
Well, it's been talked about endlessly. Like, objects in mirror are closer than they appear. So clever. Or like the dinosaur, the shaving cream canister of the dinosaur DNA going back in the mud and being buried, how that comes full circle. Or for example, the lunch scene, which is iconic because of the back and forth. I will say with that one scene though, it is funny. I thought, watching it this time, the lighting, it kind of doesn't make sense. This is kind of a gripe.
The projectors?
Well, yeah, the projectors are like behind each character, but like they would be definitely
in their
glaring in your eye for certain people. So the camera is always very low and puts the projector behind them. But anyways, it's a small thing.
How does that work, Steven Spielberg?
Yeah, Steven, tell me that. I really wanted to like touch on something which has always kind of made me feel a way, and I've never heard anyone talk about it, but it's like a very specific shot in transition. Alan Grant is sleeping in a tree protecting the two kids, and they're looking at these Bronchiosaurus.
Mm-hmm.
There's this like 10-second sequence of Grant, he throws the velociraptor claw onto the ground, and he's kind of accepting his lack of purpose now. You know, he's a archaeologist, and here they are on this new discovery of being able to recreate life and dinosaurs.
And see them in real life instead of understanding them from their bones.
Yeah, exactly. And he kind of has lost his purpose in a way. He feels extinct. And I think it's that acceptance of that, because he kind of does it with like a smile.
Mm.
And then you hear a Bronchiosaurus roar, and the roar then transitions to the next shot where the roar fades and it shows the merchandise of Jurassic Park. And I don't, you know, obviously as a kid, you don't take that in, but you do. It made me always feel a certain way, and it was like kind of the sadness along with John Williams' score, but that transition of like the roar kind of fading out and then seeing this merchandise which will never get to be used or consumed or experienced. The park fails, you know, at this point you know the park's gonna fail. John Hammond's dream has failed. Dinosaurs have been extinct and they're not meant to be here. It's that combination
and you clearly see the reason why. Yeah.
And you see the reason why. It's that combination of feelings, and maybe I'm not putting it in such a great way, but it's that complex of all those things. And then from the merchandise it shows John Hammond, and
he's eating ice cream.
He's there eating ice cream, and he's so bummed out that this isn't going to work out. And then obviously the scene that follows is still him like holding on to this dream, and Laura Dern kind of talking him down from it. It's fantastic. And again, it's such clever storytelling by Steven Spielberg, which you don't really see at all anymore, I could confidently say.
One of my favorite things was in the beginning of the film when John Hammond's showing the park to these people. One of the most I find it a creative way to explain the whole story of the discovery of how they were able to create these dinosaurs.
I know what you're gonna say.
It's
great.
Through this childlike lecture. I want to say elementary school lecture because it has the cartoons and it's fun and it's interesting and it keeps you intrigued, and it's a perfect way to explain the process and the way they came about this discovery.
It's always felt like someone popped in a VH. You know when they roll in the TV into the classroom and you're like, oh, we're gonna watch something.
Mm-hmm.
It literally felt like that education video that you pop in on VHS, from the quality to like the narration.
Maybe it's nostalgia because we grew up with the VHS time of like teachers popping in videos that explain.
I always love the whole movie. I love obviously, but that part too sticks out so much, and I'm so glad you're mentioning it because it perfectly, like, even if you don't initially, you wouldn't understand like what they're talking, you know, DNA and frog DNA and the sequence gaps. It explains it perfectly, and from that point on, you get it.
I really think that you're right. It is lost almost in this film industry these days, and I just want to point out, like, this is why you only need to watch Jurassic Park 1993, and if you pay enough attention, or you watch it the amount of times we have, you can learn so much from this film and the way that Steven Spielberg makes it a perfect film. That's it. That's all I can say.
I loved watching it with you, and I'll always love watching it. It's one of those endlessly enjoyable films that... Timeless. It really is what cinema... It speaks the cinema language.
Yeah.
And to be helmed by such a great director, It was awesome.
I'm
It is
glad we
awesome.
grew up with it.
Yeah. So pretty much what we're saying is watch Jurassic Park 1993 and don't bother watching the other ones. Maybe if you know on a lazy day you want to pop in the second one for Jeff Goldblum, do it. But really it's all in the first film. It encapsulates everything you need from this story. Read the book. Don't watch the other movies. I'm gonna stick to that.
Thank you so much for listening. If you do have anything to say about this or disagree, if you agree, please write something in the comments. We appreciate any feedback or just any kind of discussion. We want to talk about films with you.
Yeah, look, we're open to anyone's opinions and we could have a civil discussion. We'll try our best, but you know, we want to encourage multiple perspectives. Maybe you could convince us. I doubt it, but
Yeah, let's
try
to convince us why these other films are
valid.
great or valid. I guess that's the right word.
Valid.
If you like this video, please click on the subscribe button down below and
the
make
bell.
sure to hit the bell for notifications. Thank you, Alexander.
Sorry,
Okay,
I'm
do
good.
it with me, do it with me. We also have an Instagram account called @Ashli and Alex. You can follow us there for more updates and just pretty much more about us. And we also have Letterboxd.
Well, Letterboxd, it's a non-sponsored, but it's an app we both use and we love. Pretty much it's used for movie lovers to share or organize their movie watching experience.
It's
Basically,
the best community for movie lovers, so we highly recommend getting an account and following us.
yeah, it's a great way to organize your movie watching experience.
Thank you
very
so
much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're awesome.